Now we're going to start working on the equations that are needed to be solved for this review. We're going to start with number 10, 2 sine x is equal to -1. By dividing both sides by 2, we see that sine x is equal to -1/2. So let's go back to our unit circle. So looking at our unit circle, there's a couple of things that we should probably think about. One, sine is negative in this quadrant and in, I didn't mean to move that. And it is actually negative in this quadrant. So wherever we end up, we know that we're going to be in these two quadrants. So let's think about what we know. We know that in quadrant 4, this has a value of √3/2 -1/2 when we have a rotation downwards of -π/6, or when we go all the way around 11π/6. And then looking at the blue one, we actually know that this is going to be a rotation here where we get -√3/2 -1/2 as our point. This will happen with a rotation of 7π/6. So our general formulas for this will be 7π/6 plus 2πk. Remember where k is an integer. And it will also be 11π/6 plus 2πk. Part B asks us to find all the values within the interval -4π to 4π, where this happens. So for part B, we're going to start off with letting k equal -2. Let's see what happens. We get 7π/6 minus 4πk. So let's think about it. We need a 6 on the bottom here. So just doing some arithmetic, I can actually make this be 6 and 12. So when I multiply that by 2, I get -24π/6. That should give me -17π/6. That's our first value. We'll do the same thing with the pink one. Again, this is going to become a 12/6. We'll let k equal -2. 11π/6 minus 24π/6 is going to give us -13π/6. We have found our first two values for theta. We'll do this again by making k be 1 bigger. If k is -1, 7π/6 minus 12π/6 equals -5π/6. And in the pink one, we have 11π/6 minus 12π/6, which gives us -π/6. When we let k equal 0, we just get the ones that we found initially over here. So we get 7π/6 and we get 11π/6. Now let's let k equal 1. We're going to be finding those positive values with more than one rotation. We get 7π/6 plus 12π/6 gives us 19π/6. And again here, 11π, that should be pink, sorry. 11π/6 plus 12π/6 is going to give us 23π/6. So we can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 values where this happens. So our answer for part B would be -17π/6, -13π/6, -5π/6, -π/6, 7 pi over 6, 11 pi over 6, 19 pi over 6, and 23 pi over 6. If you're wondering why we stopped here, I want to point out that if we had let k be one bigger, say k became 2, this would be plus 2 pi. Since these are both positive, something positive plus 4 pi is going to be bigger than 4 pi. We're now going to solve number 11. Tangent of 3x plus 1 equals 0. By subtracting 1 from both sides, we see that the tangent of 3x equals negative 1. If we think about our circle, we know that tangent is going to be negative here and here. We also know that tangent theta has a period of pi. So we're only going to find one solution and then we'll add pi k to it. That's going to happen here. We know then that 3x will be 3 pi over 4 plus pi k. But I need to figure out what to do with this 3. So I actually divide both sides by it. X is going to be 1/3 3 pi over 4 plus pi k. And that actually becomes x equals pi over 4 plus pi over 3k. And that is our general solution for this problem. But when we look at part B and we're asked to find the answers on the interval, we need to simplify this a little bit so we have a common denominator. So I get 3 pi over 12 plus 4 pi over 12k. That just helps me with adding my circle rotations around to it. So let's start then with k equals negative 1 because we are looking from negative pi. So 3 pi over 12 minus 4 pi over 12 should give me negative pi over 12. There might be more of these that happen. So let's keep checking with k equals negative 2. We get 3 pi over 12 minus 8 pi over 12. That gives me negative 5 pi over 12. I'm going to keep looking backwards and see if there are any more negative angles. So we'll do negative 3. So 3 pi over 12 minus 12 pi over 12 is going to give me negative 9 pi over 12, which will simplify to negative 3 pi over 4. This is the first one we've had that will cancel, will simplify. Let's look then at k equals negative 4. We get 3 pi over 12 minus 16 pi over 12, which is negative 13 pi over 12. But I want to make a full stop here. This is less than negative pi, so this is not a solution. So this one kind of gets marked out. It didn't really work out for us. Now let's look at what happens as k becomes more positive. So if k is 0, of course, we get 3 pi over 12, which is just pi over 4. If k equals 1, we get 3 pi over 12 plus 4 pi over 12, which is 7 pi over 12. If k equals 2, we get 3 pi over 12 plus 8 pi over 12, which is 11 pi over 12. If we add anything more to this, we're going to get a number bigger than pi, so we want to stop at this point. And our list of answers is negative 3 pi over 4, negative 5 pi over 12, negative pi over 2, negative pi over 12, pi over 4, 7 pi over 12, 11 pi over 12. And there's all our work for this problem.